All right, welcome everyone to Three Questions to Better Business. It's been a while since we've been here, but fortunately, business is going well. So I do these whenever I can, and I'm really excited today. Today, with me is a woman who has been a friend of mine for almost, Kay, you've had to put up with me for nearly 3 decades.
Unbelievable.
Just saying, I'm
And
sorry.
we still look so youthful.
Yes, we do. So with me is Kay Fittis. Kay is a dear friend. We've known each other, like I say, a long time, and she is one of the most compelling speakers I know. She was really my first speech coach in early days in
Take
Toastmasters.
me through.
She would give me the feedback I needed to hear. But Kay does an extraordinary job with women in the workplace to help them succeed at a higher level than even they think they can. And what we're going to talk about today, drum roll please, is how professional women can be more effective communicators. Now, Kay, before we jump into this, give everybody just a little bit of your background and what brought you to where you are today.
Oh, it's a sad, sad story, Mike. My original background is the mental health field,
Mhm.
and I had reached a point in my career where I was doing a great deal of programming for nonprofits and had developed an area of expertise around women and women's issues, and got this wild hair that it was time to move on. I really didn't see that my career was going to be advancing where I was. We went away on vacation. We came back, and as we're driving home, I say to my husband, "Guess what I'm going to do on Monday?" And he says, "Well, there's no telling." And I said, "Well, I'm going to give notice at my job." And he said, "And do what?" And I said, "Start my own business." And he said, "With what?" And I said, "Plastic." Not something I would recommend for another individual to do as an entrepreneur, but I did. I took the jump, I took the leap because I knew that if I didn't do it at that stage, I might never do it. And I would love to tell you it was just a phenomenal success story, and that I was wildly accepted, and people were beating down my doors for speaking engagements and trainings and on and on. And that wasn't happening. In fact, I had a situation where, through a friend of a friend, I got to do a presentation to a gentleman for the women in his organization. And finally, he just, of course, today he would get probably prosecuted for harassment, but he just reached out across the table, took my hand, and said, "Can I give you some advice?" And very quakily, I said, "Yes." And he said, "You cannot articulate what is in it for me, my company, or the women in my company to have you come in and do programming. Go back and be able to articulate that, get yourself some name recognition and a little bit more confidence, and then you can come back and see me." I went to the car and I sobbed for what felt like hours in my car, and then came to the realization that I did not know what made really successful women successful. And so I went on that quest to learn that, interviewing hundreds of women. And out of that came the program that I work with all my clients today,
Wow.
taking a look at 6 P's that really make for a very strong, powerful professional woman. Power, personal esteem, what you think about yourself when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Power, professional esteem, things like how you negotiate your salary. Power, verbal language and nonverbal language, which we're going to spend some time talking about today.
Sure.
Power, presentations, and power, packaging, as in self packaging. And everything I do today with clients, whether it is a keynote or a workshop or career coaching, all falls under that umbrella.
It's
So,
incredible how that research you did early serves as the foundation for
oh
your
my
work
gosh, yes.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting how when you find what helps you, well, there's the key in the road to how to help other women as well.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted you on today, because you have helped me over the years working with women clients. I mean, early on, as we were going through our Toastmasters journey
Mhm.
together and building our businesses, there were basic fundamentals you taught me that I wouldn't have been aware of. My favorite that I still share with folks is when I meet women who, at the end of their sentences, raise up. And
Oh,
yeah, the inflection, and I
yeah,
tell them right away. And I always preface this because I think it's important. I'll tell them one of my good friends who's a woman professional taught me this. So it's not me coming across as man telling woman, hey,
very smart.
and they all say, wow, I didn't realize I've done it, or I don't know how to change
Change
that.
it.
And
Yes.
that's like, well, I actually have met somebody recently who does specializes in that. It's a whole cottage business right now.
Yes. Well, awareness is the first step. And
Yeah.
but kudos to you for not getting into the mansplaining
Mm-hmm.
that is prevalent these days, has been for a long time, and seems to be a continuing pattern that doesn't serve any of us well. So
Yeah.
very smart on your
Right.
part.
Well, I mean, I like to give credit where credit is due anyway. But yeah, I mean, that really has helped soften that blow so it avoids the mansplaining. And this is a great lead into the first question for you today, which is,
Sure.
what is it that women in the business world need to ditch, just get rid of when it comes to communication?
Bias is bountiful, Mike. So let's kind of create a foundation here before I answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, women have had to be very creative in their communication in the workplace because when they have decades back, as women began to move into the world of hierarchical work, there was a real dilemma. And that was if they were outspoken, bold, extremely confident in their communication, they were labeled as, instead of assertive, they were labeled as aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being labeled as someone who had an opinion, they were labeled as opinionated. And last but not least, unfortunately, they were labeled as the B word
Yeah.
instead of being a powerful woman.
Right.
So it's that conundrum. If I soften myself to be accepted and not be viewed as an angry woman, then I come across as weak, ineffective, and wishy-washy. So we begin to ask ourselves, what's a woman to do here?
Mm-hmm.
And my response to that is always, no change happens. No change happens. Now, you may say that's not terribly profound, okay? But it is. If we do not change things, if we do not have the courage to change, then nothing changes. So,
Mm-hmm.
with that foundation, some of the things that we as women need to ditch are learned behaviors. Some of these are very conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Women that have been in the workplace a significant period of time, they have actually chosen some of these things that need to be ditched. Others have just watched others. They've watched their role models and they're not even aware that they're consciously doing it. So
Okay.
the first one would be, we need to pay attention to our hedges. We're not talking, clipping the bushes out in front of the house. Hedges are those statements, those phrases at the beginning of a sentence that soften it. Words like, this may not be important, but just in my opinion, I just wanted to say, can you hear the softened nature of that, Mike?
Oh, what I can hear is the loss of credibility.
Oh, absolutely. Immediately, everything else you say after those initial words has just been completely X'd out.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a challenge for many women. And quite frankly, I have a client that it's been fascinating to watch her change using these hedges. Initially, she got some real pushback, some
Really?
real negative responses, because
Wow.
people were so used to her. We're going to call her Wendy for the moment. They
Okay.
were so used to Wendy speaking like this. It was literally a jolt to them when she began to change her pattern of speaking. But ultimately, it worked. She is an engineer. She has any number of direct reports, and what she found previously was her, let's call them commands, instructions, were often completely ignored. They literally ran all over Wendy. As she
Mhm.
began to change her verbiage, she began to see changes in their behavior with them. And perhaps you've seen this in some of your coaching clients in terms of presentation skills. As they change the way they present, they are perceived very differently.
Definitely. They command the stage or the camera more.
Yes.
People don't get distracted.
Yeah.
They pay attention. So absolutely. So it's those qualifying statements up front. You call them hedges
Yes.
that completely discredit what you're about to say.
Yeah. And credibility is what it is all about. And I will say this, oftentimes, particularly when I'm working with a new client, she may say, and we're going to talk about a number of things that really mar credibility, but she'll say, I think this is trivial stuff. This is trivial stuff. Isolated by itself, it may seem trivial, but it's like just drops in a bucket, you
Yeah.
know? Each drop has an effect. Ultimately, that bucket gets really very heavy. And so this litany of communication styles and ways of speaking ultimately end up to be just huge credibility robbing behaviors that women use. And again, I'm not throwing women under the bus. These are learned behaviors. But anything we can learn, we can unlearn. You know,
Absolutely.
another one is add-ons. We talked about the beginning of a sentence.
Right?
The end of the sentence can be just as damaging. Think words that you talked about, the inflection and going up at the end of a sentence. For now, in case your listeners have not picked up yet, I'm from the South, and we end every sentence with an uptick. Everything sounds like a question. One of
Yeah.
the things that's been very challenging for me to change has been that speech pattern.
Yeah.
But couple that with words like, okay, don't you agree? What do you think about that? Are you on board? Every one of those is yet another nail in that coffin of credibility.
Right.
Now, there is a difference, and I'm sure you can well pick up on the difference between really trying to elicit collaboration and teamwork and consensus. This is different than that. This is just a common pattern, a common habit. If you are really trying to glean collaboration, glean consensus, you will do it in a different kind of way.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that is a speech pattern that really works against any number of women.
Yeah. So we
Hear
need to
that?
ditch the ditch before and after.
Yeah, yeah, the before and after absolutely is a big one. And there's another one that I'll throw in for good measure here that may be even more insidious, and that is the indecisive I. That is the I think and I feel.
Mhm.
Women have actually been, this is less picked up behavior and more taught behavior.
Okay.
Women have actually been taught to say, I think and I feel. My response to that usually is at work, I got news for you. They do not care what you think and what you feel for the most part. Yes, we're creating a more empathetic workplace, supposedly, particularly as we have dealt with COVID. But for the most part, that is only going to make a woman sound opinionated, that she really does not know her stuff, and that she cannot take a stand. So ditching the I think and the I feels are probably more important even than the hedges and the add-ons. And that's a tough one to change. That one's a little bit tougher.
Well, what you're talking about here is habit change, which I
Yep.
frequently work with people on. Is one of the a parallel idea in speaking is, well, what I want you to take away today.
Mhm.
And what we teach is they don't care what you want, what is in it for them, what you're going to take away
Yes.
today. And it's just something that's simple. And that's not as deep an emotional issue as what you're talking about.
Right. Absolutely right. But you're right. It's learned behavior, it's habitual behavior. And until someone points it out to you and you have this beginning awareness, and then you begin to practice some new habits, and then you deal with that pushback that you likely are going to receive. That's why I say it takes courage to make these changes, because
Yes.
very likely you will get some negative pushback in regard to this.
I think you have to get to the point, and this is true for women and men. You got to get to the point where you feel, not think, I've had enough.
Yeah. Oh,
Until you get, and pardon the language, until you get pissed off enough
yep.
to say, I'm done feeling like I'm a doormat or whatever you're
Right.
feeling, you're not going to change. And we talk about this all the time. As speakers, our job is not to make people feel good,
That's right.
right? It's to make them feel uncomfortable, because we don't change until we're uncomfortable. Well,
That's right.
the women you're working with, they've gotten hopefully to the point where, all right, Kay, I need your help. I'm uncomfortable and I'm not going to put up with this anymore.
That's exactly right. Because there is a price that they are paying. And until we reach that point, there's more of a payoff.
Right.
Price is what it's all about. And once the price you're paying gets higher and higher and higher, then it's worth it to you to do the work of making change.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's dealing with this concept of systematic desensitization, doing
Yes.
something new that feels bad, but after you've done it 100 times, it doesn't feel so bad.
And that's exactly right.
It's a new habit.
Exactly right.
Now, you've covered a lot with that. With the next question was, what are some communication habits that you see that women have that are costing them credibility? You've mentioned the before and after the sentence,
Yep.
and also some vocal tones. What else do you hear women doing that is hurting their credibility when they communicate?
Well, you just brought up an important point, and that is that sense of being less than, of not being owning your power, of really feeling a sense of I have a right. I have a right to be here. I have a right to exist. I have a right to express my perspective on things, my stance on things. And one of the ways that I see this showing up and in a negative way is oftentimes during the Q&A. Now, I'm sure you do Q&A in your keynotes and in the programs that you do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes at the end, back in the good old days when we could actually stand in front of an audience, you'll have a microphone over here and an audience member there. And 9 times out of 10, if it is a woman, the first thing she will say is, I'd like to ask a question. And immediately my head just internally explodes. You don't have to ask permission to exist. You don't have to ask permission to inquire. You don't have to ask permission for anything. You have a right to be here. So usually I will gently say, it's okay just to ask the questions, a little bit like, the Nike just do it.
Yep.
Just ask the question. Next person will stand up, and I swear to you, they will do the exact same thing. My response will be exactly the same. Just ask the question. By the third person up, you will hear. I, if I had it on video, it would be phenomenal. I don't. I've got to get it. But you will hear the entire audience of women say out loud to her, just say it. It is a hoot.
Love it. That's fantastic.
Absolute hoot. But it is more than just a poor habit. It is a symptom. So this is one, and it shows up in meetings. It shows up in a Q&A session at a keynote. It shows up across the board. And this is something that women need to pay attention to and ask themselves first, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
I mean, that's a real opportunity for reflection to think about what is prompting this way of asking a question. And women that I work with on a consistent basis that have morphed this completely say that it just gives them an enormous sense of solidarity. I mean, physical solidarity, and then a sense of emotional solidarity and a sense of power as they do this. It
Wow.
sounds small, it sounds trivial, but it's amazing what it does.
Well, in the speaking world, and I just had this week, and it's a parallel idea. Somebody wanted to start. It was a man I was working with. He said, "I want to tell you a story," and then he tells a story, and I said, "Never say that again,"
Yeah.
because first of all, I don't care what you want. Goes back to that. These sound little and picky, but they are insights into what you're thinking. And you just help give me a deeper insight on what people are saying when they say, I want to tell you a story. They're asking for permission. And you work with speakers too. We tell people it's your room. You've been asked to speak for a reason. You better command it, and it better be the first words you say, or else they're questioning your credibility right off the bat.
And the reality is, for women, there's a wonderful quote by a woman with the name of Pauline Fredericks. A man walks to the front of the room, he speaks, people listen. A woman walks to the front of the room. If they like what they see, then they listen.
Wow.
It's a powerful thought. And everything that we say, every motion that we have, every body language communication that we do is part of that power or robbing of power.
And I'm pretty sure you helped me formulate this thought that I developed years ago. And that is everything being equal. And this is not a fair statement I'm about to make. Everything being equal between a man and a woman has to do better on stage
every time
than a man.
Every time.
It's not fair, but it's just the reality of it. You got to be that much better.
And that's one of the mountains I climb with new clients, is that anger about the lack of fairness in the workplace. Yeah. And I'm a strong believer, if you're working your tail end off, if you are amazing at what you do, you're a dedicated and loyal employee, or if you're an entrepreneur, you're all of those things in your own business, why in the world would you not change some of these other things that are within your power to change so you can get what you deserve? It is a Sometimes it's a mountain I really have to climb with clients, but it's once they once they embrace that, once they really get that this is easy compared to all those other things that they have done, they go, okay, I'm with you on this, Kay. Yeah, I deserve to do this.
Is your job, that's really interesting that you mentioned that, Kay. Is your role in that situation to help them with their focus? Because you said, I mean, anger can be a very blinding emotion. And with that, they are so focused on aspects they can't change that they're blind to those that they can. And you've got to help them tone the emotion down and say, let's change your focus for a while, and then we'll deal with this other issue later, which you push way down the road because they can't control it anyway.
That's exactly right. It usually comes with starting by affirming how incredibly angering, frustrating, and unfair that is. I'm the first, and I started my career in the 70s. I've been through a lot of crap in these decades, and by the fact that I was born female, well, I kind of got the short end of the stick. Once I accept that that is true and say, okay, now I'm ready to say, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to take it and I'm going to place it over here now. But first, it starts with acknowledging, yeah, this really is unfair, and you still have control. You still have control.
Once you help a woman see that, do you also say to her, now how much more time and emotion do we want to devote to this? Or
Absolutely. And usually I ask her on a scale of 1 to 5. I really put a numerical assessment on this, and it'll still pop up periodically. It's like, okay, there it is. I get that it's there, but this other stuff, there's a nice, specific word, but these other behaviors, this other verbiage is something you can control.
yeah,
Control what you can, let go of what you can't, or try to change that too.
that's what I like about getting older. I realize, this thing over here bugs me, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I don't have
Yeah,
the energy for that.
exactly. Is it really worth the emotional and the physical energy? Because all of that angst is as physically depleting as it is emotionally and mentally depleting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well,
Yeah.
this has been great so far. Now we got the last question. To me, this is my favorite one.
Okay.
All right. What's your advice for women on how they can get rough and tough when dealing with others? I mean, how do they do
It
that?
sounds like I'm trying to, turn women into Amazons. And it's not about becoming an Amazon, but it does come back again to respecting oneself and setting the stage where others respect you as well. One of the behaviors that I see with many, many clients is the problem of interruption. It's in staff meetings, it's in larger meetings, large department meetings. It may come up in associations that people are a member of. There's fascinating study by any number of universities, but my favorite study is from George Washington University that says men are 33% more apt to interrupt women than they are to interrupt other men. And this is an area that I really encourage women to get rough and tough in regard to. Simple, it's 3 simple steps, but it does start with courage to say, this is not appropriate, and I am going to take a stand. So the 3 steps I work with a client will be, first of all, say the individual's name, look that person straight in the eye. It's Fred, then a stop motion, whether it's the whole hand there or just a finger, not this finger, not another finger, this finger, and then not done, or just a moment, or I'm going to finish my thought. I got to tell you this real quick. I don't know how
Sure.
we're doing on time
No, we're
here.
fine.
Okay. But very recently, I had a client call and she said, "You will not believe what just happened." She's in the insurance industry. She is in a workplace where it is predominantly men. She is usually one, maybe two women around a conference table. And this happened consistently. She was always interrupted. Finally, she said, "I've had enough. I'm not going to put up with this anymore."
Yeah.
And she did the three things, and she did it consistently for about 3 weeks. Initially, nothing happened. After about 3 weeks of this, she walked out of a meeting. A guy pulled her aside and said, "Where did you go get that backbone?" And she said, "What?" And he said, "I have watched you and you have changed," and gave her a big high five. That in
Nice.
itself was incredibly affirming.
Yeah.
And what she then asked of him is something that just, I will say, warms my heart, because we all need allies. And that was, he said, "I am willing basically to be your ally. You've been running this gauntlet by yourself. I see what you're doing. I applaud what you're doing. In the future, I am willing to be your ally and say, if you don't, just give her a minute and let her finish."
Yeah.
Such a simple thing that men can do for women. We have to be allies in this workplace battle that we go and engage in every day of the world. Because if we do not support one another, we undermine one another, and none of us need that.
And it doesn't help. And that, I love that story and I appreciate it because as a white male, I'm in a position to do not just for women, but people of color or
Absolutely.
young people to be aware of it. And I try to be. And I've got a story to share from today that will help. If you are
Correct.
speaking, this will help. But I have a responsibility to make sure, because I always look out for speakers, and I hate it when people do side talk when people are speaking. It's like it's rude. I'm very aware for speakers to make sure they get respect, but
Mhm.
I have a position where I can help if I see somebody interrupting to say, would you please stop?
Yes, and I will say that that's something that I have valued in you, Mike, for as long as we have known each other. I have always seen you be an ally for women, and I suspect that has a lot to do with the way you were raised and your very special mother that I know about. But you do that, and you do it in an extraordinary way.
Well,
So.
I appreciate that.
From this woman to this man, I say thank you.
You're welcome. And you know the story. My mom laid down the law for me early in life. Not that I ever would have done this, but she told me when I was a young man, if you ever lay a hand on me, I'll kill you in your sleep.
I don't
I
think I've
said,
ever heard that.
Ma, I wasn't thinking about it, but now that you've established the ground rules, we're good.
I love
And
it.
my
I
mom's
love it.
5'1" little French woman, and
Oh,
but no,
that is too
yeah,
funny.
she
Yeah.
raised me to
Don't mess
respect.
with mama.
She laid it down. Well, let me tell you what happened today, and I don't want to brag, but okay, today I spoke in front of 18 live people in
Oh my
person.
God.
In
How
person.
heavy.
Don't want to brag. It does happen. No, what happened though, and unfortunately, I've gotten great training over the years, and I was taught how to read a room even before you start.
Mhm.
Now, this was eight. This was a group of business. It was salespeople. It was 18 men and one woman is what it was. 19 people in the room. Okay, so I immediately spot the guy in the room who needs to be seen,
Who needs what?
to be seen and heard.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So I've already got my radar up for him. So sure enough, and they asked me, "Do you want Q&A at the end, or do you want it during the presentation?" I said, "No, we can let people ask during the talk. I
Mhm.
don't care." So sure enough, the comments and the questions start coming, and the person who needs to be seen and wants to command the room. Well, I've been taught, and this is for anyone watching, when you are presenting and you've got a person like this who wants to take over the event, don't watch that person, watch the other people in the room. Watch for their reactions. And the moment you start to see eyes roll or people starting to sigh, they've just given you permission to cut this person off.
Yeah.
Now you got to do it respectfully. And it got to the point where this person made a comment and started to go off track. And I watched. And as soon as I saw it, I said, you're making some really good points, but we're going off track. I want to respect everyone's time.
Beautifully done.
And, and especially if you're a woman, you're going to have to do this.
Oh.
Because to your point, Kay, the men in a room will run roughshod over you if you let them.
They absolutely will. And it's not even necessarily intentional.
No.
It is part of learned behavior for men, just as these communication habits that we've talked about today are learned behaviors for women. The famous feminist Gloria Steinem put it really very well. She said, the first problem for all of us, both men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn.
Yes.
And, I feel like I spend personally more time unlearning than I do learning. A lifetime of behaviors that I have been taught, and then that becomes my responsibility in working with my clients, a lifetime of behaviors that they have been taught. But the good news is we can unlearn, and we can then learn new behaviors that serve us all so much more effectively.
Absolutely. And the key to that, you got to want to change.
You betcha.
Can't make you do it unless. Okay, it's always a joy to talk with you. It's been with COVID, we haven't spent enough time together, but I appreciate your insights. And look, I know you've won different awards and you've gotten a lot of accolades, but you're about to receive one that very few people have gotten. Some of the guests on this podcast or on this interview series, this is something because of your skill and all the time I've known you. You have a skill of being able to dig down into people and to find their treasures. So because of that, you, my friend, are a recipient of the Golden Shovel Award.
I love it.
You're sharing company with people like Ed Tate.
Gosh,
you have the ability to
such good company.
Dig down. Now, Ed has a world championship trophy. He's a CSP. He said he's putting that right next to his awards on the
absolutely. I got the 2021 and 2022 Best in Chic Career Coach. I've got that on my mantle. I will put the shovel right next to it.
Right next. You will get your certificate. And look, I ain't framing it for you.
I know. Some people's friends just won't go the whole 9 yards.
Extra mile. So, but you will get that because all kidding aside, you are fabulous and you've demonstrated it today in digging down into people and helping them see the light that's in them and shining that on them so they will bring that to the surface. Because we both know as coaches, we don't see the value that we bring in our stories, in our experiences, because we lived it.
That's right.
And if we can help shine that light on other people, and you, because of that, are a recipient of now the Golden Shovel Award.
Woo-hoo!
With that, if people want to reach you, they can contact you, Kay at highheeledsuccess, correct.com.
Yeah.
Also, that's your website, High Heeled Success.
Well.
It is High Heeled Success too, correct? Yeah, it is.
That's correct.
High double
heeled, even if you wouldn't be caught in a pair of red high heels, this may still be for them.
I'll do whatever it takes to get the message across.
I'm still waiting for the day that you come to one of my programs with a pair of heels on, and we can talk about that off camera.
Yeah, I've been looking. I just haven't found my size. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today, Mike. As always, I applaud what you do in this series because you really give people an opportunity to highlight issues that are of interest to many, many, many people that watch this.
Yeah, thank you for providing your wisdom. You are a rock star. And with that, I will see everybody on our next broadcast.
fantastic. And I had the shovel.